Does our criminal justice system truly guarantee justice for all? Not if you don't have the money to hire your own top-notch attorney, it doesn't. Our Sunday morning cover story is reported by Lee Cowan.
I was looking over the brief.
You're about to hear some pretty strong words from this law professor. So strong, they're almost hard to believe.
I pledge allegiance
But listen carefully.
of the United States of America.
When we pledge allegiance to the flag and we say with liberty and justice for all, that's just not true. I'm sorry.
So is the notion of equal justice under the law really just a myth?
Oh, I think it is, yes. Unless something changes, we're going to have to someday sandblast equal justice under law off the Supreme Court building, because for the 80% of people who are poor, we don't have anything that comes anywhere close to being equal justice under law.
Shocking, right? His name is Stephen Bright. He currently teaches law at Yale University, but he spent much of his career at the Southern Center for Human Rights, fighting to help those charged with a crime but can't afford an attorney to defend them in court.
They're hot, okay? So, you got to blow them like we do.
People like Shauna Shackelford.
Is it good?
So what did this do to your life?
Ruined it.
Yeah.
Tore it apart.
Back in 2009, her home outside Atlanta caught fire. She wasn't home at the time, but she had taken out a small insurance policy on that rental house, and that made investigators suspicious.
I thought that it was just a misunderstanding. Like, they're going to figure this out and it's going to be okay.
But it wasn't. Shauna found herself under arrest, charged with arson.
My grandma was like, you might need to get an attorney and talk to somebody.
Did you have money for an attorney?
No.
So she applied for a public defender, a court-appointed lawyer tasked with making sure the Sixth Amendment is upheld. That's the part of our Constitution that guarantees any of us the assistance of counsel.
The next case on the docket is the case of the state of Florida.
It's a right that's been tested in court, most notably in a case brought in the 60s by a petty thief in Florida named Clarence Gideon.
I request this court to appoint counsel to represent.
Unable to afford an attorney, Gideon was convicted and sentenced without one. He appealed, arguing his right to an attorney had been violated, and the U.S. Supreme Court agreed. But while the Constitution may promise everyone legal counsel, it says nothing about the quality of that legal counsel. And that's something Shauna noticed right away.
How long did you have to wait to hear from your public defender?
2 weeks. And his response was, I got a bunch of cases like yours, so I'll get to it when I get to it.
When he finally did get to it, instead of going over the details of her case, Shauna says he simply told her to plead guilty and take 25 years behind bars.
He said, well, if you didn't do it, then who did it? And I said, I don't know, but I didn't burn it down. And he was like, well, I mean, it looks like you did. He knew nothing about my case. When he was talking to me, he was mixing me up with some other case. Like, he had no idea what was going on.
Shauna's case is not unusual. Nearly every case, roughly 90% in fact, often end in a guilty plea. Largely because even if a poor defendant is innocent, most can't afford bail or to wait in jail for trial, which means losing their jobs, their cars, maybe even their homes in the process.
Being arrested and spending 4 or 5 days in jail can be enough to ruin a person's life, even if they're ultimately found not to be guilty of anything.
But this is what we call the arraignment.
Take the city of Cordell, Georgia, for example.
There won't be any evidence presented.
Watch how these defendants all plead guilty as a group.
How do you put it? How do you put it? How do you put it?
Bright calls it the meet 'em and plead 'em defense.
You'll see a crowded courtroom, and there'll be a lawyer there with his legal pad, and he'll be, Ms. Smith, is Ms. Smith, raise your hand. And they're trying to identify their own clients. And this is getting ready to go before the judge in just a moment.
Have a seat, folks. Be seated.
We saw the same thing in a Miami courtroom.
My clients all arrived on the bus.
Where one public defender had to handle a crowd of clients all at once.
I don't care who the person is. I don't care how dedicated they are. You cannot represent 500 criminal defendants at the same time and give those clients the representation that they're entitled to.
Nowhere is the problem of indigent defense more acute than in Louisiana, which has the highest incarceration rate not only in the country, but in the world.
Yeah, hi, this is Rhonda Covington at the Public Defender's Office.
Take Rhonda Covington. She is the sole public defender responsible for representing anyone too poor to afford a lawyer in her judicial district.
That case was dismissed.
That district encompasses about 1,000 square miles.
Just ballpark figure, how many people are you trying to defend every year?
Probably 500-600.
Every year?
Yeah.
The professional standard, according to the American Bar Association, is about 150 felony cases a year. And some think even that's too much.
Jimmy, you still here?
She has 2 paralegals and 2 contract attorneys who help with the load, but they're only part-time.
I really don't have time to go to the jail and check on it. That's not right. No, I'm sorry. This was filed in the wrong file. Hang on a minute.
It's mostly just her and her 2 cats, named Liberty and Justice, by the way. She even cleans the office herself.
I can ask the judge to reduce his bond. Some people say, well, any defense will do. And some people think, well, you know, they shouldn't have representation because they've been arrested. My job is not to get people off when they've committed crimes. That's not what I do. What I do is to ensure that their constitutional rights are protected.
The bulk of the state funding for Louisiana's public defender offices comes from a pretty unpredictable source. It's traffic tickets, which, out on these country roads, isn't exactly a windfall.
Compared to the district attorney's office, what's your budget like?
His is 6 times more than mine.
Out of that budget comes assistants and investigators and access to pay for things like DNA testing.
I've gone to crime scenes before with my own camera taking photographs.
Really?
Yes. So each year, it's always something a little less, a little less, a little less.
Doing more with less is why she thinks she lost the case for this client.
I believe you. I've always believed you.
56-year-old James Waltman.
I've decided to go ahead and file a second motion for new trial, citing the reason being that we had insufficient funds in order to investigate your case.
Waltman admitted he assaulted his wife during an argument, but the state also charged him with kidnapping and rape, sentence-heavy crimes he insists he never committed. Covington believed with some investigation she could have at least lessened the charges, but she didn't have the time or the money.
I couldn't shut down my whole office for that one case.
Being innocent, I had all the confidence in the world that I'd walk out. But it didn't happen.
All across Louisiana, public defenders in 33 of the state's 44 judicial districts now admit they're in the same boat Covington is in. They're simply too busy to ethically handle their caseloads.
If you ain't got a paid lawyer, you're gonna go through this.
Joseph Allen was arrested last year in Baton Rouge for a firearms violation, as well as a marijuana charge. The court didn't even know he was in jail because his public defender didn't know he was in jail.
Did it feel like anybody was on your side?
Not really, no.
Nobody there to sort of help you through the legal maze? Nobody to
No, sir.
explain the charges?
No, sir. I did all that up on my own, reading the law book.
Now Allen and 12 others are suing Louisiana's governor and the Public Defender Board in a class action lawsuit brought by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
We're arguing that being appointed an attorney who doesn't know who you are, doesn't investigate your case, doesn't come to see you, doesn't take your calls, doesn't ask for a bond reduction, doesn't investigate the evidence, doesn't talk to any witnesses, and doesn't do anything else to move your case, file any motions that are particularized to you, you don't have an attorney. You have an attorney in name only.
Lisa Graybill is the Southern Poverty Law Center's deputy legal director.
I don't believe in filing lawsuits unless you really have to, right? If there were a way to avoid filing it, we would have. But this injustice has gone on really for too long. It's unacceptable.
Back in Georgia, Shauna Shackelford spent years researching her case by herself. Her public defender was too busy with other cases, she says. In the process, she lost 2 jobs and her home. After all, who wants to hire or rent to a suspected arsonist? Had it not been for Stephen Bright, the only person who would seriously look into her case, Shauna would probably be in jail. His investigation, which he did for free, proved that the fire was the result of faulty wiring, not arson. It took him just 2 weeks to get Shauna's case dismissed.
Just 2 weeks worth of work.
2 weeks. That's all it took. Somebody used to do a little research and try. All right, come on, let's get in.
It still took Shauna Shackelford, though, 3 more years to get the charges off her record. But now, with the nightmare finally behind her, she's started anew.
Hold on, let's do undo your foot.
She's opening her own business and focusing on being a mom to her 2-year-old son, J. Ben.
You did get justice, but not the way it should have come.
No.
Or at the price.
It was almost like having to give up my life for my freedom, and that's what I had to choose in the end. I had to give up so many years in order to get to the point of freedom.